Hey guys, welcome back to the next episode of Brand Builder TV. As you know, I'm a big advocate in branding in 2020 versus 2004. The difference, 2004, it's what you knew and who you knew. 2020, it's what you know, it's who you know, but just as important, who knows you. So I'm excited to have our guest, Angelo Ponzi. I'm going to give the stage to him, the microphone to him in a few minutes, and let him introduce himself and kind of give us that 30,000-foot view, right, where you came from, where you're at today, and where you see yourself going. And we're gonna chunk that down a little bit. And I'm really interested to get some more context and get a little deeper on your title and actually what you do. I think you're going to be able to bring a ton of value and a lot of new value to our audience. Absolutely on my end as well. So I'm excited to have you, and I want to thank you for taking the time and jumping on here and sharing some of your real world value, real world wisdom with our audience.
Well, I appreciate it. I enjoy doing these, and part of what I do is giving back from the people that when I was young and they used to, and I say, how do I thank you? And they'd always say, someday you'll be able to play it forward. And I always keep that in mind. So there's always opportunities. I do a lot of public speaking and educational work. So I'm excited to be here today.
I love it. I love it. And we, I do the same. I love speaking from stage, whether it's digital or physical stages. And a big, there's no secret, right? As you give back, it comes back tenfold in different ways. That's just life's rules, not ours, right?
I love it.
That's the way it is. So give us a little 30,000-foot view of who Angelo is and kind of where it started in the business world and where you're at today and where you see yourself going.
Well, if I go back to where it started, it goes back a long ways. And I think you know this, but I'm not sure, but I also have a podcast show.
I know through your LinkedIn profile and things like that.
Right. So I actually just did a show recently, and my dad was a plumber, and so I did a show called Life Lessons from the #1 Plumber in the #2 Business.
Okay.
And I talked about how he used to have me do work, but ultimately I saw the value he was instilling in me. He was an entrepreneur, and I got to see that my whole life. So as I came out of college, the first thing I wanted to do, of course, was have my own business. And I did have my own first business at 23. It was in the film business, actually. I had this brilliant idea with a couple older partners of mine to bring Hollywood to Orange County. It failed miserably. We spent all our time in Los Angeles, so it was a bad model. But I learned an awful lot. And then from there, really, I've jumped onto the advertising agency side, is where my training originally came from, an agency called Bozell. Back in the day, it was like the 16th largest in the world. I worked at regional firms. I had the opportunity to start my own and grow it and sell it and then become part of another agency. And I've also been client side, from Fortune 500 down to startups with literally no money, trying to help them grow. And I did equity trades for that. Longer story, I'm trying to make it as short as possible. About 5 years ago, corporate side again, a big conglomerate came in, bought us. They wanted our government side. They could care less about my commercial side. And over the 2.5 years, I saw them basically shrink it and really close down on it. And I saw the writing on the wall, and I thought, I'm not going to let anybody control me again. I'm just going to go out and do what I do as a consultant. It isn't my first time, so I have no fear. Which is good and bad, I guess.
Right.
So it's 5 years later, and I am, as you pointed out, a fractional chief marketing officer or interim marketing officer. And I work with companies in their C-suite to help more strategic alignment as far as messaging and positioning and values and market research, and really helping to craft who they are and position, and then help drive growth or turnaround or whatever it happens to be. I do get my hands dirty from time to time because I have to, because some of the businesses are smaller. But for the most part, like one of my clients has 9 people in their marketing department. And so I came in and I oversaw them and helped educate them and lift them. Part of my assignment was to make them more strategic and less tactical. And so that's a role I do play quite a bit. I actually have a client in San Diego right now that That's part of my role, is to elevate their marketing folks as we develop more strategic plans for the future. And so I play in these buckets I call insights, brand, and plan. And I prefer they go in that order. So insights, market research, understanding the marketplace, the competition, the dynamics of what's going on. It could be political, it could be interest rates are raising, whatever can impact the growth of your business. And then from there, develop the brand, the strategy work, the messaging work, and then on to planning, which could be long-term plans, could be marketing plans, could be business plans. And then the implementation, which is the fourth bucket, and that's typically where I bring in other people in to help.
So the fourth bucket, you bring in like other subcontractors that help fill those voids?
Sure. So let's say in my plan, it called for lead gen, social media, video, and a trade show. I don't do those. I do the strategic part of them, but I don't physically do them. So I would go out and partner with one of my social media people, make sure they're executing my strategy. They have client interface, but they're really following my direction.
Yep.
Same thing with PR, whatever the vendor happens to be. Now I do write, so sometimes I end up doing a lot of writing because I'm doing messaging work. But I don't build websites. What I don't want to be is I don't want to be another advertising agency.
Yes.
I take it right up to that line and then pass on it.
Man, I love that. We are cut from the same cloth. Last 20 plus years have been fortunate enough to have built and sold 3 companies in 3 different industries, and also crashed one to the ground. But I'm such a big fan and believer in being able to leverage your weaknesses and your strengths, and know what really works for you and what doesn't. So in a way, and I actually own and operate a fire restoration business out here as well. And so I do the same thing. It's sitting in that general contractor seat, if you will, and then overseeing everything. I love the strategic versus the tactical. I love the way that's said and stated. That's interesting, because I wrote that down when you were talking, and I wanted to come back, but you actually answered that for me. And I want to use you as a great example for the audiences when I speak, and people, when they introduce me, I say to the event planner, make sure that you highlight that I also crashed one to the ground, because that's going to get people's attention, and that's what's going to connect. And so many people ask about that, and I want you to go a little deeper on this. But I tell people when I don't have a lot of time, I say I didn't do what I knew what was right before, and that is identifying my weaknesses so I can run and triple down on my strengths. And in a way, right, you might word it differently, but in a way, that's what you do, and that's what you've found in a positioning in your niche. And share with everyone if you feel that is important, and if it is, why.
Well, I think it's extremely important to do what you do well, and do it better. Do it to greatness. So many times, I saw this the other day. So I'm working with this group, and we can talk about that later on. It's kind of this collective of C-suite guys. But I got there, and the valuation guy had redesigned the intro page to our presentation. And he must have spent hours on it, because what he did was interesting, but it wasn't the brand. And so it's like, stick to what you do well. This is my lane. And otherwise, just you make the presentations, right? So by understanding where the weaknesses are, for me, it is a strength. It allows me to capitalize and find the right people that can fill in that weakness and that niche.
100.
That weakness ultimately could become a threat. So if I'm taking it too far and I'm not doing it well, or I'm out there positioning myself a certain way. So case in point, I have a market research background, and I've spent a lot of time in market research. And when I first started this business, I used to talk more about market research as an entry point. But I'd be at these events, and people would say, "Oh, I do market research." "Oh, okay." And I would mosey on. And then I said to myself, there's no way this person's doing market research. I know they're not. And so when I would talk to them, they'd say, "Oh yeah, we talked to a couple customers," or, we look at a competitive website. But But that's not competitive research. That's not real market research. That's not doing quantitative statistics and segmentations and variations and using max diff analysis and all those kinds of things. And as soon as I start that, they go, we don't do any of that. The point is, you're playing in a lane you shouldn't be playing in because you don't really know what you're doing. We can go use any survey tool, even Excel, and create percentages, but that's not a good indication of what your market really has. And so, that I always look at what kind of danger I do if I happen to kind of cross the line. I was told 20 plus years ago, you cannot draw a straight line with a ruler. Stay out of the creative side. Like your ideas, but don't ever try to execute them because you're horrible.
I love that, and I love that. It's interesting. People have their different definitions until that smoke is cleared. Like you said, they thought they were doing market research until they spoke to you. And one of the things that came to mind when you were speaking too about that is, in your world, in your niche, it becomes your oxygen, and your goal is to become the best. And I had a show back in 2016 and 17. It was a mobile podcast called Monster Motivator TV, and we're actually going to relaunch that coming into 2020. And one of my last people on was Tom Bilyeu from Quest Bars. And Tom always says, him and his partners took Quest protein bars from zero to, and I think in 8 years, to a 1.2 or 1.7 billion dollar evaluation in 2017. And he said, Dave, there's always room for the best. And I always remember him telling me that. And I was just thinking that when you were talking. Share. I want to get your feedback on one of my taglines is, and you heard this in the intro, is understanding branding and marketing in 2020 versus 2004. I have my take on that, but you're perfect for this.
Well, brand is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And protecting that brand is utmost, because at the end of the day, even if I made a widget or I had a service and I decide those aren't any good anymore and I add a new one, I'm still bringing it under my brand. So it's utmost important to protect the brand that you're establishing and understanding what the value that brand brings to the marketplace,
mm-hmm.
and in protecting that and making sure that everything you do supports that. And so and I look at 2020 coming up versus, I think you said 2004. Life's very different from 2004 to 1999, right? It's way different. And so if we think about where marketing is going, any blog or anything you read, it's all about content. And content is king. I actually did a presentation a few weeks ago, and I was like, not another boring content is king presentation. So we turned it into a Jeopardy game. And it was so much fun. There was about 50 people in the audience, and hooting and hollering, but they were learning something because we were really challenging them. So when I think about 2020, I look at personalization is going to be extremely important. Now, in some cases, the personalization on a website is extremely expensive. There's a lot of new tools coming out that allow you to do it less expensively. And I actually even saw one this morning, and don't ask me the name because I can't tell you, but I can tell you that they literally saying that they could customize it to the point in this newsletter that you and I could be in the same database, but because of the details they have on us, when the newsletter gets published, it actually pulls content that's relevant to me, and you won't get the same newsletter because it's not relevant to you.
Wow.
And it was brilliant. And I looked at the website, I saw it, and it was really confusing. So I have to go back and take another look at it and see if it makes any sense. But personalization, be able to talk to your target audience at the various levels, and you've heard customer journey, right? The journey of the customer, where they are. Are they just learning about your brand, about your product and services? So we even look at Maslow's hierarchy, right? And awareness. You're going to talk to them very differently than if they're down in the consideration set and they've already done their due diligence and they're already down to the wire. Now they're getting the nuances. You can't still talk to them about the value you did when you were back talking about awareness. So understanding that journey is going to be extremely important. and identifying ways to serve up content at the right time, in the right channel, at the right place, in order to make sure that you're nurturing them along. Because we also know, depending on what your consumer product, if I'm going to go buy a soft drink today and I see a new soft drink, good possibility I might walk out the door tonight on my way to my meeting and stop and buy a soda. But if I'm buying a new computer or a new printer or something I don't know about, well, it's going to take a little bit more time. The last statistic I saw, I think it's about 75, 85%, something like that, that especially in the B2B world, most people spend 85% of their time researching online before they ever actually pick up the phone or go into the store to buy something.
85%?
Yeah, especially in the business-to-business world.
Wow.
So it's huge. So if you're not online and you're not delivering the right kind of content and being able for getting that overview, let's say you go on your landing page and now they want to go into the next detail page. So how do you nurture them along to make sure that every step of the way they're getting a little bit more, but they're making the choice. I have a client that we did some work going on a couple of years now. It's really one of the longest fractional jobs I've had. And the website's fantastic. But as I've been looking at the analytics and as the brand has been growing, I've seen people hitting the landing page and heading to the pricing page. So my comments to them the other day in a meeting is, we see a lot of traffic on our pricing page, but we don't see people actually even getting to the cart and then not even clicking the button. So there's something there on that page we've got to fix. And I think the journey that we took them on might be too long now. So my advice to them is, let's start changing that journey. Let's look at where they're going, because we can see that stuff in Google Analytics, right? The flow of where they come in and where they go. And let's start really kind of mimicking that and making sure we're serving that right content. If we're telling them X, Y, Z on the landing page, if they get to the pricing page, they're already in the, there in the consideration, but we're not driving them over. So how can I communicate to that person? We've got the site divvied up. So we talk to, in this case, their moms and dads. And then over here, there's people in career transition. But a lot of the words are the same. And so I even question now that we've got more experience with the brand, that we need to go back and start honing our messaging and things like that. We hone it all the time, but I think there's either another evolution after some recent things that we did. And that's the other part of 2020. It's measure, evaluate, rinse and repeat.
Yes.
If you're not closing that loop and taking the time to understand what's going on, it's crazy. I see a big sun's coming in through my window, so hopefully that.
Yeah, we'll just keep scooting you over.
I'll scoot over. There we go.
You brought up an awesome point on, and the value that you bring to the table is that let's look at the numbers, let's look at the stats, let's look at the direction, let's look at what's going on. We have the tools to do that. Let's do that. I just listened to Dan Fleischman. I was on the road today. I was listening to a podcast, and he was talking about the tools at our disposal today. He says, I know what a company's doing. I know where they've been. I know where they're going. Within 10, 15 minutes. Now, this is his wheelhouse, right? But right. At our disposal, we have all these. So if I'm not an analytical guy. I'm the creative guy, but I need that analytical person. I need that back end numbers cruncher, if you will, because I'm the guy that was going to tell you that I did my market research and then you came to me. I'm that story, right? That's who you'd be talking to. But to identify that, I think is so valuable and so important. How much do you get involved in the social media aspect of your clients?
Very much. You can't ignore it these days. And so I always look at, when I look holistically at a client, I look at their competitors, in some cases I mystery shop them. I look at their websites, and I go on everybody's social media, because I want to see, number one, which ones are they using? How well are they using them? And is it even relevant to what they're doing? Or is it that, I need to be on Instagram. Why? I don't know. I just know I need to be. Yeah. So I find that a lot. And I work with small to medium size, so like $3 million to $100 million. And I don't care what size they are, and I don't care how long they've been in business. I find stuff that just blows my mind, that they grew and they're doing well, but there's just certain fundamental things they just don't do well. So I always look at that social media aspect of it as, do we need to be in every conceivable channel, or do we need to pare that back? Do what I always tell my clients: pick one, pick two. Let's do a fantastic job with those two. And if we need to expand it, then we can add another one. Oh, I need a YouTube channel. Wow, we don't have any videos. Why would I need a YouTube channel, right? So, I want to post in LinkedIn. Well, you don't have a company page. Let's get the basics down. Let's get a rhythm. Let's get going. Let's set your calendars. Let's look at content. I always recommend to clients, get 3 months worth of content ready.
Okay.
Lay out your calendar, especially in blogs that take a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
And then as month 1 starts to execute, you're developing the content for month 4.
Mm-hmm.
So you're always got at least a month buffer, maybe 2 is better, but at least a month buffer, because something's going to happen. Somebody's going to go on vacation, and you're going to start to eat up that time or those posts, for example. And then you're scrambling at the last minute. And what you don't want to do is be scrambling when your next post is due, and you don't want to be skipping it or doing things irregularly. Once you set a pattern, so like with my podcast, for example, I do it every week. And I remember during the summer, my wife says, "Why don't you just scale back, do it every other week or once a month?" I said, "No, I can't do that, because I've set an expectation. That is my brand. That is my delivery. People look for it every month. And if I disappear, I'm going to lose all my audience. I don't care how much they like me." Right? So it's about consistency. And it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be a lot. I do a lot of little blurbs, even for myself, in a little graphic with a little comment, and I post them all the time just to stay visible.
Mm-hmm.
I use a scheduler now. And so, while we're talking not quite, but at 3 o'clock earlier today, a post happened while I was, not even in the house. And so that takes a burden off of me. So it takes me, 30, 40, 50 minutes to set it up for the week. And then I forget it.
2 things I want to definitely I want to make sure that people get these 2 golden nuggets that you just shared. Number 1 is, I love the idea of the 3 months of content, and you shared why you love that. The other thing that I love about that I want to add in is what that also allows you to do, and I know you're a big fan of this just from what you've already shared today, is it also allows you to tweak. Right? So if some of this content is working and connecting and getting feedback, now you can go deeper on that. Or if you have some content, right, it gives you, in a way, it gives you that crystal ball, right? Yep. 3 months ahead. Okay, they're not really biting on this content. Let me go a little deeper on this content. So I love that idea.
Yeah, and you're right. It does. Is that bothering you? I can go put a screen up.
Oh, I'm good. I'm fine. Okay. Yeah.
But I think that your point is a great point. It gives you some flexibility. As soon as you're behind and you're scrambling, I was working with this group. We were trying to start an association. And in the beginning, everybody was gangbusters. The assignment was everybody writes a blog a month. So the 6 of us, that actually gave us 2 blogs. We always had this reserve. For almost a year, like clockwork, we had blogs to post. You only had to write 1 a month. Then next thing you know, I'm busy, I'm on vacation. Yep. We posted 1 blog in 3 months. And that whole concept of what we were trying to do with this has just fallen apart because of the inconsistency. So back to my ideas, do less, do it well, and then expand.
I love that. And it's going to go to my next thing that you brought up. It's perfect. Consistency, right, builds the ultimate, which is brand loyalty. And one of my taglines is brand loyalty is king, because it leads to trust.
Yep.
And look, better than anybody out there, trust is where it's at. That's why you have a big conglomerate or a big corporation that has an entertainer that's going sideways, and now all their money's, instead of that budget money going to more branding and marketing for that entertainer, it's going to PR, right? It's going to fixing their brand, so we trust them, and it's the same in 2020 for our personal brands / business brands. So I love that you talked about consistency and how important that is, because it comes back to trust. If you have a corner store and they're not open, they're only open on every other Monday or so there's no trust.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned personal branding, and really in today's day and age, I mean, you have to be able to establish and maintain your personal brand as well.
Yeah.
Even if you're in LinkedIn's and the Twitters, all that changed, right? There's no more hiding who you are. So, we used to call it butts in the seats. And sometimes in some of the smaller agencies I worked at, we'd have a new client coming in, for example, and we'd say, hey, Ron, hey, Bob, I need you to come to the office. Just fill in the seats. I need to look like I'm really big. And then all of a sudden, the prospect would be at another agency and they'd see the same guy sitting in the seat because they were just fillers. And so those days you could never find out who they were, but now you can. And so maintaining that brand, it's like going on social media and posting the drinking all night long. It doesn't do well for your brand. My son was a baseball player. Unfortunately, he hurt himself and had to quit. But I remember at one point in time, we went to a gun range, for example, and he posted a picture. He went to Long Beach State. By the time we drove from Mission Viejo to where I live, the coach was already on the phone telling him to take it down.
Really?
Because they didn't want to see that kind of, it was, obviously it was controlled, but for whatever reason, they decided that wasn't a good image they wanted to represent. And it was really innocent, but you go online and you see people partying and doing stuff, but that's part of their character, and those things translate, because nowadays just type in your own name. Most people don't do this. Go Google your own name and see what pops up. It's really interesting about what is out there about you, or other people with your name.
You know what? That's a great point that a lot of people don't think about. And I always a lot of times I'll start my talk because I work with higher end commission salespeople and small to mid-sized company owners as well. And I always say, how many people here have a social media platform? And it's going to be 99 to 100%, right? Going to raise their hand. You're a global brand. Whether you like it or not, whether you understand it or not, you're a global brand. And the old school paper resumes it's about your social media and how you. Let me ask you this: which team are you on? Are you on the team that you believe that the platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, should be catered to that platform, or do you think that on a personal brand, a smaller business brand, that they can get away with posting the same content as long as it fits within the realm of their brand? What team are you on? Because I know there's two teams.
I think part of it's about if you know your audience and you can segment to your audience.
Okay.
If you're doing a generic post, for example, I do it. When I post and promote things, like I'm going to promote this, you might send me a clip and I might decide that clip works across all my channels. But I might find one clip here I like better than over here, and I'll switch it up. But unless I'm going to go in and really buy ads and drill down on the audience and get into the demographics and psychographics and all that, I don't think for me, it doesn't make any difference. For me, knowing that if I'm trying to reach business users, I'm on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to reach more parents, I'm on Facebook. If I want to reach kids, I'm on Snapchat or Instagram. So, I mean, it's where the audience is going at this point in time. And I know we can drill down. I know we can do a lot with it. But if you're just posting versus, buying ads, doing pay-per-click or Facebook ads, then you really can't drill down on a lot of those issues. I just did a boost, for example, for a client on Facebook. And there, because I was using dollars, I could go in, I could target a community, I could target a gender, and I could target an age bracket. And that's what I did, but it cost me money.
Yeah.
So for me, that's where the difference comes in. But again, not everything fits. You can't go in and post that 3-minute video on Instagram. So if you want to go do a clip that you can make sure, and this happens to me all the time because I do a lot of video work. And sometimes my videos are just too long and I have to make a hard decision. Do I really want to go clip it up and go put it on Instagram? I don't really have a big following on Instagram. So, but I really promote my business, but my business is me. So it's kind of my brand is my personal brand.
And that's great, because that's who you're really talking to, because I work with higher end commission salespeople. So real estate, mortgage, financial advisors, right? Insurance, higher end auto, things, people in that world. So a lot of them don't realize that their personal and business brand is so connected in today's world. And it's so important to not only understand your brand, understand your audience, but be that consistent brand and,
Right.
and show up that way.
And anybody that has a business should have for example, on Facebook, they should have a company page.
Yes.
And not just their personal page, right? Because
Yes.
then you're posting about your business on your personal page, and the next post is, you in the backyard in the jacuzzi. It just doesn't mix, right?
Yeah, right. It doesn't, and you want to connect, right? Because that connection creates trust. Man, I love it. I love it. Is there anything that you want to share that I didn't touch on that you want to share with our audience?
I think that for me, what I run across, and I'm going to say the most, in the small to medium-sized businesses, is that they need to spend time working on their business, not just in their business.
Okay.
So they need to carve out time to do strategic thinking and planning, and to think about the future, really, and not be reactionary, but more proactive. And I find that a lot of them just don't do it.
And so really, in essence, again, I'm just using a different verbiage here, pre-paving, right? So you can, and ultimately learn how to scale that and be able to, like you do, whether it's utilizing somebody like you or maybe doing it on your own, but filling those voids, right? So it's more of a well-oiled machine that can scale versus kind of being stuck in that rut, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you think about scaling, I mean, you have to understand your capabilities, whether you're using salespeople or whether you're inside sales, outside sales, whether you're manufacturing and capacity. One of my clients, we talked about growth, but one of the questions we had is, if we grow at 10% or at 15%, where do we exceed capacity? So the growth limited us. We limited growth based on what we could actually handle. So if we wanted to grow, got some weird things going on my computer here. If we wanted to grow, we needed to add a new manufacturing facility or distribution center, right? So we weren't going to get there if they were just out selling every day. We didn't take the time to go into a room and think about it, do some market research, talk to the customers, and have an understanding of, what our potential was in the market.
That's a lot of value that you bring to the table for the majority, right? Because a lot of small business owners and these commission-based people, but mainly small business to mid-sized business owners, just don't naturally think like that, right? And to bring someone on like you could really make a world of difference, night and day, within 2 to 3 years of their established company. That's a fact.
I just started working with a small startup that sells software into the optometry marketplace. And they created it. They're actually doctors, but they've never run a business. They've run their optometry offices, but they've never run a software company. And so I just consult with them. They bounce their ideas off me. I look at their presentations. I give them, advice on how to present and how to deal with pricing issues and pushback and things like that. But they implement it, and they've been taking my advice, and they've been having some success. But more importantly, they're learning. They're getting better every month that they go out there and do this. And so where they might cave and start giving away the farm, 2 months ago, now they actually push back. They walk in with, here's our game plan. This is a second offer, right? This is the timeshare. We're going to take you in the other room. We're going to give you this final offer in the Ginsu knives. But they don't have a third. They don't have a fourth. It's this and this. And their goal is to prove the value that they bring to the client. It's the other, one more thing is, I find a lot of times, especially with small businesses, and I say small, but I'll reference a 30-year-old company, and when I started working with them, I was looking at their materials, and it's all about, we are great, we are wonderful. If you work with us, you're going to, have great success. And I looked at them one day and I said, who cares? You sell to malls, for example, and now you need to talk to your customer at the mall and tell them why, if they hire you, their customers are going to find tremendous value. They're going to have memories. They're going to come to the shopping center more often. So it's not about the relationship with you and your customer. It's about the relationship with your customer with their customer. That's the value. That's the way we need to communicate. We have to understand who's the user, right? I can go and talk to a mom about an educational program, an SAT program, or this program that we work with. But ultimately, the kid's the one that's going to use it. So I need to make sure there's a relevancy of how the child can benefit, and not just the mom feeling good, right? But how the child can actually benefit. So we got to look how we craft our speech. And that's part of it, is how do I bring value, how to communicate value, not only for you, but ultimately for your customers. And obviously that changes based on product, service, industry, things like that. But still, it's important. There's a process called laddering. Where it starts down, called laddering.
Okay.
And so it starts, there's a blog on my website about laddering.
Okay.
It starts at the very bottom. What are the product features and the product benefits? Then how do you leverage those rational benefits and then layer them up, ladder them up to the emotional benefits of the user, right? So ultimately, it's like, why would they buy you? Well, because your product does this and does this. Well, what's it going to do for me? Well, it's going to make sure that I reach my sales goals and do all this. And ultimately, for me as the individual, I might get a raise, I might get promoted because I was smart enough to do this. And so it's a kind of these interconnecting ladders, if you will, of how you can pick what's your strongest attributes.
Wow.
To really promote, to make sure that it's relevant to the end audience. And that's the other thing. I mean, relevancy is just so important.
I love it, and it maps back to connection, which ultimately maps back to trust. Wow, I thank you so much for bringing a lot of this real world value to our audience, because at the end of the day, to me, theory gets in the way. Let's get the real stuff that's actually been used, and the people that are actually in the trenches doing it. So I want to thank you for taking the time. And how can our audience find you?
I always tell people to go connect on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Angelo Ponzi. Also, my website's called the Ponzi Group, and my computer's doing some really crazy things. Ponzigroup.com. Mm-hmm. So it's the Ponzi group.com. And also, I encourage people to check out my podcast, which is Business Growth Cafe. And I'm on all the major podcast platforms. And the concept of that show is about looking at the internal and external factors, the different disciplines that can impact a business's growth. Everything from CEOs to people like myself, or salespeople and manufacturing people, designers. I just had a guy on that talked about a couple people on hiring process. Actually, I just posted a blog or a little video on approach to hiring people and making sure. So many people, when they think about hiring, they look at job descriptions. Frankly, the job description is useless. Ultimately, we need to know what is the function and what's the things we need to accomplish, and then can that person really do that job? So build a job description based on what you really need them to do versus here's a job description, do you fit it?
Yeah, reverse engineer that. Yeah.
So great stuff there. I typically I post a video of my show, then I do the podcast, and then and then on a lot of occasions I turn them into short videos, and I turn them into blogs as well. So wealth of information, and I think some great advice from a lot of people over the last year.
I love it, and we're gonna make sure that we have all your links, and we're gonna put them in the notes as well. So you're gonna be real easy to find. And I know that's how we connected on LinkedIn. And again, I want to thank you for taking the time. Right, time is everything that we can't get back. So thank you so much for that. And guys, thank you so much. And if you're getting value from this, share it, get it out there, because I'm bringing you people that have been there, done it, and actually are still doing it, because that's the key. And remember, brand loyalty is king because it maps to trust. Trust is the long game. Trust is everything. And that's what we want to focus on Brand Builder TV. And again, thank you so much for being on. And I'm looking forward to staying connected.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. It's been really fun.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.